This is the download recap from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. The download recap is brought to you by Podscribe. You can find out more at podscribe.com. This week, Spotify forges multiple video podcast distribution deals, discussing collaboration with Livery.io and Companion, what happens when college students critique AI-generated podcasts, and how to advertise to advertisers at ad industry events like Advertising Week. Let's get started. Things kicked off Tuesday with the news that Netflix and Spotify had entered into a distribution partnership. With the new deal, select Spotify Studios and The Ringer video podcast episodes will be made available on Netflix in early 2026. The initial batch includes sports, culture, lifestyle, and true crime podcast episodes, with the plan being to add more podcasts from within the Spotify umbrella over time. A quote from Lauren Smith, Netflix VP of Content, Licensing, and Programming Strategy. Quote, "As video podcasts continue to grow in popularity, our partnership with Spotify allows us to bring full video versions of these top shows to both Netflix and Spotify audiences. From pop culture and lifestyle to true crime and sports, this curated selection of video podcasts adds fresh voices and new perspectives to Netflix, making our entertainment lineup more exciting than ever." End quote. Then on Tuesday, Spotify video podcasts appeared on another streaming platform. Spotify has launched its first free ad-supported TV channel, or FAST channel, exclusively on Samsung TV Plus. While the Netflix deal includes both The Ringer and Spotify Studios content, this FAST channel is programmed exclusively with a curated selection of top podcasts within Bill Simmons' The Ringer network, including hits like The Rewatchables and The Ringerverse. This week, Brian Barletta returns to deep dive conversations with podcast industry professionals in a new video featuring two different companies. This conversation brings together Livery.io president Elias Frankel, director of operations at Companion Art Shaya Mogharabi, and Companion General Manager AJ Feliciano. The group discusses how Livery came to be in the first place, how Frankel first approached Companion, and what the service has done to open up valuable bandwidth as operations folks like Mogharabi have time-intensive tasks taken off their plate by Livery. At his Business of Podcasting course at NYU, Stephen Goldstein invited Tom Webster as a guest lecturer on the day the class discussed AI podcasts. Each student was tasked with selecting a fully AI-generated podcast from a catalog of around 450 produced by Inception Point AI. A consensus arose that while podcasts that deliver matter-of-fact information tend to score higher with the students on a scale of 1 to 5 than your AI air quote hosts trying to emulate conversational tones, the students also said they'd rather just read factual information themselves rather than listen to an AI read a Wikipedia page. Here's a quote from Goldstein. Quote, "Tom, ever the researcher, pressed the group with a question. If the information is correct and useful, does it matter if it's AI? Most said it does. Podcasts, they explained, are a human medium. They tune in for the voices, quirks, laughter, and even tangents. As one student put it, quote, inside the quote, I listen to podcasts for the personality of the person. That's what makes me care. End quote, ×2. Many were prompted for a synthetic experience just by the telltale signs of generated artwork being used for the podcasts themselves. A core theme throughout the discussion is that of the emotional core of podcasting. Simple information, even if 100% correct, does not automatically make an AI podcast engaging. The students seek connection with another person when choosing podcasts as a medium. For an AI-generated podcast to work, it has a much better chance of being chosen if it is fully transparent about its generated nature instead of trying to hide that fact. Facts are facts, but it's the humanity of podcast host voices and their lived experiences that keeps audiences coming back. It's time for a thoroughly out-of-date exhibit joke here. Advertisers are advertising to advertisers, especially during Advertising Week New York, which acted as a microcosm of targeted marketing. Article writer Victoria McNally reports that nearly every digital out-of-home screen in bus stops, subway stations, and digital billboards near Penn Station were running ads meant specifically for those in the advertising industry attending the event, not the millions of New Yorkers streaming by on a normal day. Here's a quote from McNally, quote, "Most of the companies that Ad Exchanger spoke to about their ads for ads during advertising week were dipping their toe into digital out-of-home for the very first time, hoping to capture the attention of the 20,000 people that Advertising Week estimates were in attendance," end quote. Usually, business-to-business ads focus on social and highly targeted TV spots, CTV spots specifically, but events like Advertising Week New York serve as reminders that there's plenty of other ways to get your brand in front of the right person at the right time, to which I humbly suggest business-to-business podcasts as an evergreen example of something that gets you in front of the right audience in the right place. Finally, it's time for my quick hits. These are articles I've covered from throughout the week that didn't quite make it into top story coverage here, but are still worth including in your weekend reading. First up, Owl & Company takes a look at Netflix's Q2 streaming and social earnings report. As of last Friday, the enterprise value for Netflix stands at $542 billion, which works out to about $1,650 per subscriber, according to Q3 estimates of them having 317 million subscribers. Market and survey research firm SSRS has announced the acquisition of Edison Research, with specific interest in boosting SSRS's public opinion, election polling, and audience research. The Roost and Muck Media have announced a new conversation podcast dubbed The Hidden Third with Mariana Van Zeller. Amplitude Media Podcasts have entered into an exclusive partnership with Big Technology Podcast, opening up host-read advertisements on the show. And Daylight Media, a new venture from the team behind Q Code, has signed a strategic partnership with Sean Ryan for ad sales, distribution, audience development, IP expansion, and overall marketing of The Sean Ryan Show. That was the download recap brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know I went through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the link to everything I've talked about using the link in the show notes, or you can go to soundsprofitable.com and go to the download section to find any episode of the downloads links. Our producers are myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis, and I want to, as usual, extend special thanks to you for sticking with me as I brought you the top stories you might have missed from this past week. Robot.
Download complete.